of our plan for the day. What you've seen so far is part of our welcome, and we're going to go a little bit into an overview of the situation with our families and these orphans for anyone that is here today that is not as familiar with the situation. Around 9:30, we're going to go into a segment we call Current Conditions and Challenges for Orphans, and we're going to find out through a variety of speakers what is happening around Europe and in Ukraine where our children are. And at 11 o'clock, we have a section called In Their Own Words, and we're going to hear from some children who've been communicating with their parents here, and also some teens that have recently gotten out of Ukraine and Europe. At 11:30, we'll break for lunch. I know you all don't want me to mention the food truck again, but it sounds like everybody had an opportunity to pre-order that. We have 1 hour, which is why we didn't want everybody to venture out and find the DC eateries, because at 12:30 we will start back with our panel talking about policies and solutions for stuck orphans. And we'll go till about 2 o'clock, possibly some opportunities for question and answer at the end of that segment. And at 2:15 we'll be getting on chartered buses to go to the National Press Club. Our press conference is scheduled for 3 o'clock. So again, I'd like to share an overview of the children and the situation so that everybody sees who our group is and who our children are. This is kind of our plea, and you all have been carrying this message to your communities and to our lawmakers for almost a year and a half, but I believe everyone here knows there are 200 American families that need urgent support from our federal government to bring 300 Ukrainian orphans, all who are in the process of being adopted, to the U.S. for safety until the war ends and legal adoptions can resume. I don't know if everybody has seen this. I'd love to see an update on this graphic. This is from the Reuters organization from September of 2022. And you'll hear a lot of different numbers being tossed around about the number of Ukrainian orphans. And if anybody has updated data, please chime in. But on this graph, they showed about 105,000 children in Ukraine's institutions at the onset of the war. But everything in purple there represents a mass of children who actually have families in Ukraine. And as the war broke out, these children were sent back to their families. So these are families that feel like they cannot raise their children. They don't have the means, the resources, very impoverished families. Those children did have some situation to go back to. So it is only the yellow portion of the graph that are our legal orphans with no parental ties. Of those, it's 5,150 were the number of orphans at the onset of the war. 51% were evacuated to EU countries. 18% were evacuated and changed locations within Ukraine. And about 31% remained at their pre-war institutions. So we have a lot of talk about Poland and Italy and Romania, but let's not forget that 31% of those children are in the facilities they were when war broke out. So again, our group is the 300, and I've called them intended adoptees, who were identified as legal orphans available for international adoption. Now, as far as who are the children, this comes from some of the data and the surveys I've bugged you guys for. I'm going to actually start on the right. 59% of the children that we're trying to adopt are teenagers, ages 13 to 18. 39% of those are school-age children. Only 2% are the younger siblings, who I called toddlers, and most of those are part of a sibling group. My point on this slide is so that we are prepared to fight the argument that we're trying to steal Ukraine's children. Look how many of these are older children, and you all know from the foster system in the United States, children of this age are considered generally unadoptable. Okay, Again, who are the children? 85% are teens and older children. So this is age 10 and up. In this country, the odds of being adopted after age 10 are very, very slim. Many of you are trying to adopt sibling groups. Out of those 300 children, 87% are part of a sibling group. And we know from adoptions, it is harder to place sibling groups. And many of you have stepped up and are willing to do that. Now, it's very hard to talk about how many of our children have special needs. But as we'll hear a little bit later, it's fair to assume that 100% of them have been impacted by some type of trauma, some type of delays from institutional living. Now, some of you may have the medical histories and some may not have them yet, but UNICEF estimates that 50% of orphans in Ukraine have some type of physical need as well. And I would say it's fair to say that 100% of our children have been overlooked for in-country adoption. All of these went through a system where they were available for adoption within their oblast and then in the country of Ukraine. Okay, so how did children meet their American families? 93% of the children in this group have been hosted in a pre-war recreation program in our homes. There's about 3% that were introduced by another host family, about 3% with another close connection, 1% that is our siblings or a relative of another adopted child. One child or siblings were adopted, there's another one. Of our group of 300, none have been matched through the ministry program. Families that had been matched and gone through those proceedings have been able to complete their adoptions. The number of 200 families, I'm sure you've all heard this number again and again since the beginning of our efforts. This is an estimate that was put together in March of 2022 by the National Council for Adoption. It is my belief that that number has fluctuated and that there have been some people that moved into that class and out of that class. First of all, in those original 200 families, some have been able to bring children home, teenagers home on the U4U program. I've heard of a few cases where some teenagers have decided they don't want to be adopted. So those families may have left the initial cohort of 200 families, but in March of 2022, many families had not yet contracted with an international adoption agency. So there's a number of us that got on board and completed our contract, started our home study in kind of that March to June timeframe, back when the war was supposed to take 2 months. Ukraine Care 300 is a very loose, parent-run, volunteer-run organization where we decided back at the end of September, early fall, that it was going to be better for us to communicate with legislators using an organized name and an official-looking email. We communicate with about 130 families. So out of what I still believe is about 200 families, there's about 70 that are not on our roster, 70 families that probably didn't get news about today's summit. And so to the extent that any of you know of other families that are not looped in, we think some things are going to happen. The wheels are starting to turn, and we need to reach those families as well. We don't want to leave them behind. Out of the 130 families that are involved with Ukraine Care, I thought it was fun to look at a distribution. Oregon, Washington, Texas, Indiana, New York, a lot of families represented there. But again, thank you for those of you who traveled across the country in several time zones to be here. Okay, we're almost done with the statistics and things, but the 200 families, where were we in the adoption process? For anybody who sat down and counted, there's about 9 steps in the process from deciding that you want to adopt a child and all of the paperwork and all of the places that it's filed. So where are our families? 96% of our families have completed background checks that had been approved by Ukraine for the purpose of hosting. Ukraine has checked and verified 96% of our families already. Last time we took the survey, 81% of families were already under contract with an international adoption agency. Now, the reason I mention these is some of these are criteria that have been suggested for what families would be allowed to bring their kids over. In the humanitarian parole proposal that we'll talk about later this afternoon, these were some of the criteria. So this covers a lot of our families. 78% have completed a home study. 56% have gone in and received USCIS approval. 22% have submitted their dossier to Ukraine. 15% of our families have approved dossiers on file with Ukraine. And this afternoon we'll talk about how maybe that will make sense to treat these different groups differently. Okay? We're going to watch a brief video here getting to know our families.
So I'm in the adoption process for 5 kids, but we have only hosted one, and we hosted him 2 different times. We hosted him first in the summer, had him from June all the way through August, and then hosted him again in December all the way up.
She's talking on my screen, but not up there.
I think we might have to just.
Once again, as we said, a bunch of volunteers that are professional. It happens when you have professionals also.
So I'm in the adoption process for 5 kids, but we have only hosted one, and we hosted him 2 different times. We hosted him first in the summer, had him from June all the way through August, and then hosted him again in December all the way up until January, when troops were building up against the borders, and we were just praying that a war was not going to be happening. He was 10 years old when we met him, and we brought him home. And 5 days into hosting him was his birthday. And then we gave him 3 gifts. And we gave him a backpack. So when he went home, he would have a backpack to put some of his stuff in and a couple of things. And as soon as he opened up the 3 gifts, he got up and said, "I need to use the toilet." And I said, "Okay." And I just had that mama feeling where you're like, something's not right here. He went upstairs, and he was in there for about 10 minutes. And then he went into his room. And I kind of knocked on the door and went in there, and his shirt was just soaking wet, and he was bawling. And I translated to him, because his English was not as good as it is now. I translated to him, like, "Did something happen? Are you upset? Do you want to talk about it?" And he took my phone and he translated, "I want my birthday wish to be in your family forever." He was a missing puzzle piece. He fit so perfectly. And so 5 days into hosting, we said, we are going to adopt this child. And we started the adoption process while he was here with us. We were working on it behind the scenes for him to not know. So from then on, we kept making sure that we were making steps in the right way and trying to get there. And our adoption was so close to the end when this war broke out.
We also met M&M through hosting. We first hosted them in December of 2018, and at the time they were 11 and 12 years old. Like Gina's story, I think all of us, we got this little blurb about them and their photo, and from the beginning we were adoption minded, and we knew we wanted to adopt 2 kids. We really liked the idea of a boy being older than the girl, and we wanted both genders, and we do not have any biological children. And for us, this is like, we were like, this is what we're going to do. This is where all of our eggs are going in this basket, and this is how we're going to grow our family. And we saw their adorable little faces, and we sat in the living room that night. It was day 4. They had been here 4 days, and we just burst into tears. And I said, I love them. I want to be their mom. So for us, like, 4 days in and we were like, this is it. This is what we're doing, and no turning back.
So my story's a little different. I have two boys that are from southeastern Ukraine. And I actually met the oldest one when my son was still at the orphanage. We adopted and brought home our son in March 2021. And we hosted him previously. We sent him back with a phone. And when he would call me, a lot of times my older boy would be on the phone with him. And so I would get to talk to my older boy during those conversations, although we didn't understand each other. We would talk anyway. And I have some screenshots of, those times when both of the boys were on the phone talking to me when they were still in Ukraine at the orphanage. They were separated for years. I do know that. How many years, I don't know. The younger one was put into a severe disabilities orphanage. So when we brought home our son, we had to decide within days if we were going to host that summer hosting. And we didn't know how settling in was going to go. And even though our son kept telling us that this was his brother, even though biologically they are not brothers, he saw him as his brother. So we were able to get a friend of a friend who lives about 15 minutes from us. They took him and hosted him that summer of 2021. And then they basically shared him with us. And my husband was very much, we're adopting this one and we're not adopting anymore. That's it. We're not hosting anymore, so on and so forth. And he took him to the playground and we got in the car that night to take him back to his host parents. And my husband looked at me and he said, so how much is this one going to cost? he knew right away that my heart was going to be to pursue this boy. And we brought him home that night and to his host family. And he wrapped his arm. I'm sorry. He wrapped his arms and his legs around me and just cried and didn't want to let me go. And I wasn't even his host mom.
My dreams are actually even more than long-term thinking. Of course, we all want health, happiness, love, all of that. But right now, my dreams are so focused that I want them home. I want my kids to be reunited. I want them to be able to go to the dentist and get a dental cleaning and not have a toothache. I have two of my kids with heart conditions. I dream of taking them to the children's hospital and get like a solid answer of what is going on with them and getting them medical treatment. I dream of giving them an education where they are just flourishing and feeling comfortable in an environment that they don't feel like they have to hide in the corner or beg not to go to school. I want to be able to sit and tuck them in at night and just simple things that my biological kids have. These are the dreams that I dream for these kids. I mean, I'm not talking college, future, everything beyond. I just want right now for them to be able to have what my bio kids have, and that is love. That is somebody who tells them, hey, did you brush your teeth? Because literally one of my sons the other night was saying, Mom, how do I supposed to wash up? Nobody's taught me. And I told him, well, you wash your face, you brush your teeth. And I was like, how often do you brush your teeth? He goes, never. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I will make you a hygiene kit for my next trip. And I'll put labels and instructions on how to do this. I wish these kids could just have these simple experiences that make them light up like Christmas morning when we hosted them and brought them here on a daily routine basis and just being provided unconditional love.
Our dreams for these children would ultimately be a successful adoption, because as they are now, approaching 16 and 17 years old, our dream for them would be to be here and to have as much time with loving parents in a stable environment as possible. And we hang on to hope as the war drags on, but it's that I think is our ultimate dream. Of course, all the things that parents want for their children: success, happy life, successful careers, all of that stuff. But at the end of it, I think our dream is for them to just know that they're loved.
I don't want a day to go by where they don't feel loved and cherished and worthy. That their life is important. Their life has meaning. They have something beautiful to give to the world, and they've already given us so much. Can't imagine loving anyone else on this planet like I love them. I mean, of course, you, honey. But because we don't have biological children, our hearts have just been opened up to this of a parent's love, right? We never experienced that until Eminem, and all of the things, right? All of the pain, all of the sadness, but all of the joys and all of the laughs of the things they say, and you're like, wow, you surprised me with that question. Okay. But they challenge us, but they make us better. And you said it though. That was good.
As far as my dreams for the boys, for my older boy, it's the love and security of a family for sure. He definitely took a lot longer than my previous adoptive son to warm up and trust. He didn't trust that I was going to come back for him, that I cared enough, that anyone cared enough to come back for him. He's a very sweet, quiet kid, so he kind of flies under the radar. He's not a kid who gets a lot of attention, positively or negatively. And so I just want him to know he's loved and he's not forgotten. Someone cares for him and will fight for him every day the rest of his life. For my younger one, I of course want the same things, but I also really want him to get the services that he deserves. There's so many things that we can offer him that could help him flourish. And there is so much lost potential at these locations and at these orphanages of kids who have so much potential to be so much more than they'll ever be allowed to be in those positions. And that's what I want. I want my kids. I want all the kids. But in speaking about my kids, I want them to be able to flourish and be everything that they were meant to be and that they're capable of.
For those visitors here today, keep in mind there are 197 more stories like that. Just to wrap up our discussion, who are the families? Out of those 200 families, 32 are represented here today, and the number of orphans represented by this group that we want to adopt are 76 out of the 300 represented here today. We're going to take a moment. Some of you know that we had a briefing with the State Department yesterday, and Elena Lawrence is going to come up and talk to us about that briefing for anyone that did not attend. You have 2 slides. There's your 3 points, and then you can hit enter.
Okay, enter. Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning. Can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear myself. Yesterday, approximately 30 families met with the Department of State. We were given the blanket statement that Ukraine is not open to adoptions at this time, something we all already are fully aware of. Some of the key points that came from that meeting where that at the beginning of the meeting, the Department of State was really unsure and unclear about the objectives of the meeting. It's, in my opinion, they seemed a little unprepared for the discussion that was about to take place because in their minds, adoptions are closed, case is closed. They didn't have to speak with us anymore. But the 30 families that were representative there united and educated the State Department on exactly what our objectives were. We let them know that we are a united front. They got to hear issues that the children are facing, and they also provided a clear picture of our concerns. I think it was eye-opening for the State Department because the families were able to identify specific parameters of which children should be included in our ask. We told them it was not every child we were trying to bring home. It was a very specific number with very specific details. The families were very generous in educating the Department of State. I think our point got across. I think a lot of eyes were open. I think ears were listening to us. I think we bent ears, and I saw that yesterday, and it was an amazing and beautiful thing to see. Families were united in reiterating that we're not seeking adoption. We're not asking for hosting to be opened up again. We're looking for a solution to opportunities to bring our children home and legal pathways to bring our children home temporarily until the war is over, and then of course, respecting Ukraine's sovereignty, we'll adopt the children when that time comes. But that is not what we were asking. Thanks to the families, brainstorming opportunities and doors were opened. The State Department was able to take in what the families were speaking about. They were able to reiterate what the objectives were, and they were clear in communicating to us that we were being heard. We were no longer just a silent little minority in the corner or 5 people here, 2 people here. We're 200 families, 300 children strong, and they heard us. They understand that we need to create some type of pathway and solutions to bringing the United States and the Ukrainian governments together. And we need to solidify the assurances and agreements that would reunite, I'm thinking of those families, that would reunite our children with American families again. We are making a difference, y'all. Do not give up. They are hearing us. And yesterday's Department of State meeting may have started a little rocky, but it came out, I believe, with some positive future outcomes. So thank you for showing up, and thank you for continuing to fight for our kids.
We're going to move into the discussion of the conditions and challenges that the children are currently facing. Okay. We'd like to invite up Justin Hazlett as a humanitarian worker, founder of Legacy Refuge, and someone who's been on the ground and been to a lot of these shelters.
Hi guys, I'm so thankful for y'all coming out. We've been involved in orphan care in Ukraine for over 7 years. We have hosted as well, and we are in the process, we're stuck as well, like you guys, but we also run this organization. And we have spent, since the war started, we have spent the last year and a half responding to the needs of these kids in Ukraine, but also mostly the ones who've been evacuated. Because one thing we realized early on is in many ways those kids are being forgotten because their physical needs are being taken care of by the governments. So in a way they've been kind of overlooked by the world. It's like, oh, they're good. And so what we've seen is a lot of the kids, they're good situations, bad situations in terms of conditions. Like if you went into some orphanages in Austria, you'd be like, this isn't terrible. Or you'd go into some in other places and you're like, this is terrible. But what is baseline across all, they're not in families. And you're seeing issues that are being compounded. And over the last year, we've been to these kids over and over again. We go to the same orphanage groups to build relationship. And we have seen the level of hope being diminished every time we come, especially for the kids who have families waiting for them. And I want to refer back to something that President and First Lady Zelensky said a few months ago. They made a big announcement, and they had said that the most important thing for these kids is families, for any kids in Ukraine. They said they believe that every kid belongs in a family, and therefore they are going to, their goal in Ukraine is to abolish the internat system, the public orphanage system, so that the kids can be in families, foster care families, and because families are the most important. And what we're seeing across the board in all of our travels, and we have traveled a lot. This winter, we were in Europe with our family of 6 and our team. We traveled over 7,000 miles and visited over 14 orphanage groups, bringing Christmas presents, spending time with orphanage directors, and seeing the conditions of the kids. And the kids who have families, they are starting to lose hope. And when kids lose hope, we know, first of all, you're seeing depression, you're seeing a lot of bad behaviors, which they wouldn't normally do. Even in our daughter, we're like, this isn't you, girl. What are you doing? You're not going to behave this way. Come on, hold on to hope. And so we're seeing that. And the other thing that is very clear to us is almost unilaterally, directors and caregivers of the kids come and talk to us and they ask, can you please help us find a way to get these kids to their families? They know that it is best. The directors know, the caregivers know. And then there's been these blocks to get them there. And so I have seen a lot of these conditions, and I have seen these kids, and I've talked to them, and I've talked, even connected to the families, and you see this love bond that's there, and you see this connection that's there that does carry so much in their heart, but when they do start to lose hope, it goes really bad. And so I want to just, for whoever is listening, I know you parents know, but anybody not listening, this is crucial. We thought it was going to be 2 months, 3 months max, and now we're looking at a year and a half. And I hope I don't have to go back to Europe for Christmas programs, because I hope these kids are in their homes. But if we do, I want to know that these kids are being fought for as hard as possible to get them united with the families who absolutely love them. And again, I want to go back to the fact that you're going to hear bad stories, but then there's these stories where, you know, and you might have gone to orphanage, you're like, okay, this is not a bad actual condition, but the condition that we want to really get to is the fact that kids belong in families. And over, I don't know if you guys realize this, but a lot of the directors and teachers have been evacuated with the kids, and they are the same staff in some cases that have been on 24/7, 365. There's one orphanage group that we know of that has 70 kids, and there was 7 caregivers. And they're on 24/7, 365. I know how irritated I get with my kids, and we have 4. And I can tag team with my wife. You know, and so you can imagine the level of frustration and irritation and exhaustion that can be coming from 7 caregivers to 70 kids. In many ways, those kids are raising themselves. There's a lot of things that run rampant, even in a good setting in terms of a nice building. And I just want to keep going back. The building itself doesn't matter. The condition of food isn't what's important. Even if you have the best building in the world and you have 7 caregivers with 70 kids, the kids are raising themselves and getting into mischief that we all know is not good. And so these same kids have families that would take them in a heartbeat. And the other thing that we're starting to see over and over again is as these kids get to 15, 16, 17 years old, they're being sent back into Ukraine. And that is what's breaking our heart more than anything. Because you have these kids who have such beautiful potential. They have a family fighting for them and waiting for them that they could come and have a bedroom and a home in a future. And now they're being sent back from Europe into Ukraine where they're going to get stuck. The men could potentially get conscripted for war. And their bottom line, they're in a war zone condition with a family who's waiting for them. So this is so important, you guys, for us to continue to fight, to build, to get politicians on our side so that each of these kids can get to our families, whether as we know, eventually we want it to be adoption, but for now, we know the safest, best place for them is to be in a caring, loving environment instead of being transferred all over to different countries, back to Ukraine, and being raised in an orphanage. Thanks so much.
At this time, we'd like to invite Kim de Blakecourt up to the front. Kim? Kim's organization is called Nourished Hearts, but she has adopted from Ukraine. She has worked across Ukraine during wartime, has a lot of relationships there. She is an author, and she's here to tell us what she's seen on the ground in some of these locations.
Hi to everyone, especially those I haven't had the privilege of meeting yet. We've been working in Ukraine since the adoption of our son. I'll back up just a minute. I know where you're at. Our adoption took years. And I spent the last year in the Odessa Oblast of Ukraine for that adoption, fighting for the child who had already been given to me out of the orphanage. But a corrupt prosecutor stopped us from getting his visa to return home. So my husband and daughter came home from Ukraine. We thought, well, I'd be there only a couple weeks finishing. A year later, I got to join them again. And the conditions I'm seeing in Ukraine now, they're not able to be able to give these children care. They're even filling up orphanages with the new orphans that are coming in with very little to no supervision. It's not 7 to 70. And they're not officially recognized, and yet they're filling them up again. So there's probably more orphans, obviously, now than we would even have numbers on, because nobody's counting. They're in war, right? The orphanages I've gone to in the other countries where Ukraine orphans are being hosted keep begging for help. The ones that I went to in Italy and Germany and Poland, they kept asking me, where are the Americans? Can you bring some Americans back with you? Can you help us do this? I really liked Steve's encouragement yesterday about getting that bilateral agreement made between Ukraine and the United States, because I think that's your best chance of getting the United States and Canada and some other countries outside the EU that understand Ukraine just wants to be a part of the EU. And they've limited the scope of who can help care for their children based on that. And it will allow us, with that agreement in place, to be able to offer help from for these orphans from these EU countries that are getting so tired, right? Nobody expected it to last this long. But as I was talking to many of you yesterday, the thing I noticed is I recognized me and you. And I'm on the other side of this now. I'm 10, 13 years away from it. So I can look back and remember the frenzy almost that I was in during that adoption period. Because all I could think about, all I could focus on, all I could pray about was the completion of that adoption and to get home again and to be with my family and to stop learning Russian on the fly. Oh my goodness. And I just wanted to share a few things with the families just real briefly before I let you return to your discussion, is that I know you're getting weary. And I too want to encourage you to move forward. Celebrate times that you can celebrate, as hard as it's going to be for you. Take the moment to make preparations. Keep feathering the nest. Keep doing those kind of activities. And the one thing that really helped me get through that year in Ukraine alone was daydreaming about what I was going to do with my son when we got home. And it was at our summer place and him catching frogs because he was enthralled with frogs. I found that out while we were in Ukraine together. And seeing that daydream came true was one of the most special times in my life. So I want to encourage you to keep moving forward. Don't be afraid to work with others. If you're not already fully engaged with Jen and Ukraine 300, Care 300, make sure you get involved even to a higher degree. This is going to be really good, if nothing else, for your soul. And while I was living in Ukraine, I got involved with helping pass out food and drink and personal hygiene kits to the street kids, the ones that were living under the manhole covers. And I got to tell you, it was a diversion. It really does help. I hope you can hear me in this. And the last thing I want to tell you is make sure you're taking self-care. Don't hide, because you're going to want to. Continue to participate. There are other biological family members that need you. And it will really help you to talk to somebody that you can trust. Whether it's therapy or not is your call. You know the level that you're at. But reach out to someone and let them help you. I know you think nobody can possibly understand, but I'm telling you it's going to help you. And before I leave, the Bible has many blessings, but the greatest blessing of all is found in the book of Numbers. And I'd like to leave you with that blessing. May the Lord bless and keep you. May he make his countenance shine upon you and bring you peace.
At this time, we're going to call several of our parents up to talk about what is happening on the ground in Europe where their children are currently sheltered. Anna Ramos.
Hi. This is not my comfort zone, but I think all of us have kind of stepped out of our comfort zones for our kids. So I'm in the process of adopting 5 kids. 4 of them are together at one location, and one was separated earlier on. They are in eastern area of Ukraine when the war began. And while they were there, they were living in a bunker for about 2 weeks before they were really took a miracle for them to get out. And they were then sent to Italy. When they got to Italy, the location they had didn't have room for all of the kids. So they took the kindergartners and put the kindergartners in one town and the first graders in a different town. And then second and older stayed together. The hotel capacity was about 60 people. And they had to put 96 children plus chaperones into this location. It's right in an area where it's right in the middle of the town, so there is no fencing. There was not really much for the kids to do. They had just like a green field for the kids. So when the kids evacuated, we found out where they were going. Within 14 hours, 2 other moms and I got on a plane, and we were on our way. And when we got there, they had some volunteers that were already established from the Italian community. And we originally thought that we were going to stay for about 2 weeks. Ended up finding out that the need was much more than that. And I ended up staying for a month that first trip. While we were there during those first 2 weeks, we had one of the moms that was with me, and she put parental controls on her kid's phone when she contacted them, and she saw Instagram messages from one of the volunteers that was inappropriate. This older man, younger than her young teenage daughter, was writing her inappropriate messages. And on one of the first nights we were there, he was trying to lure her outside. So the hotel we're at didn't have locks because of fire codes, things like that. The chaperone, the director, and another chaperone were sleeping on the stairs to make sure kids wouldn't even go outside. So they were just evacuated, exhausted, and sleeping on the stairs just to make sure the kids stayed in their room. The director caught the girl trying to sneak out to meet this man. And we showed up early the next morning and showed the Italians and the Ukrainians the information. And she said, well, your daughter actually caught her trying to sneak out too. So we were able to figure out what was going on. And at that moment, they reacted immediately and protected the children, both Italians and Ukrainian staff. And they fired the volunteer that was there. And when they fired him, it took us over 4 hours to get him to leave the property. The other two moms and I were walking around trying to block where he was going near the kids and asking him to leave. And he had any and every excuse in the world not to get off this property. At one point, I had one of my friends that their kid is over there, and she lives in a state really close to me that we've gotten close to, as I think many of us have become a support system during all of this. I saw her son sitting at the bus stop with a man, and I was concerned. I didn't know when the bus was going to show up. I didn't know if this man was going to try to take the boy on the bus. I didn't know what to do. I immediately called her up, knowing it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I said to her, do you trust me? And she said, yes. And I was like, tell your son to get away from this man, and I'll call and explain everything later. She's Ukrainian, so she got on there and she explained it all to him very quickly. He got up and left and came back with us. That night, we went back to the hotel we were staying at and had dinner, and he started calling that teenage girl. The mom picked up the phone, and I have pictures and recordings of her saying, you stay away from these children, you were asked to leave, you don't come back. At that point, the authorities were informed, and he was written up and notified of what was going on. I have been back, would go for a month, come home for like a month and a half, go for a month. I have spent over 5 months at their location. And we've had several other incidences where the kids we've been fearful that they would be taken. When they would go down to the public park, there's like a fence down on the main street. And I guess if I want to backtrack just a second to explain, when they first got there, they needed funding. So the Italians had it in the paper of where these kids are, the name of it, the Italian man in charge. So, and then when you drive up, there's a big Ukrainian flag. So anybody who drove up, that's where the children are, and the man in charge is this name. It was just they needed funding. It was advertised that the kids were there. Well, that makes it a lot more vulnerable of a situation for these kids. So when they're at the park, we've had certain days where they would try to coerce the kids into cars with candy or ice cream. One of the days I had just returned like 2 days later, and they had switched out some of their staff, so I didn't know who was Italian or what that was there trying to also help with the kids. And the director comes running and like yelling, and I was standing next to this person, not understanding that I thought she had approval to take the kids, and she did not. Nobody knew who she was, and so they had to kick her out of the park and send her away when we didn't know at that time that she was not even a volunteer. She just was a random stranger trying to take the children. Since then, because of the funding and their situation, when I took my trip in June of last year, we noticed that the food conditions had kind of complained. I got several messages from several of the children saying that they're hungry. We didn't understand what was going on. The funding had gone down, is how it was explained to me, where then they use like a school cafeteria program where they pre-make the meals for the kids. So for an example, if you had a salad, they would put the dressing onto the salad, and then it would have to travel up the mountain to where they are. The Italian standards for food are not at the level I would say American standards are. So they lacked refrigeration, and the food condition had seriously changed. Kids complained of smells, tastes that were not at our standard. And we knew at that point we were going to have to start coming up with funds to help with the food. And the kids at that point, the staff was telling us that they were on several medications for getting sick off of the food that they were eating. So I coordinate the volunteers that go to this location, and we made it where every 2 weeks we'd have a volunteer show up. And they would bring a month's supply of buckwheat. It's one of their favorites in the evening. And then the next volunteer would bring a month's supply of like oats. So they would at least have oatmeal in the morning and then buckwheat added in the evening. Then we coordinated with the volunteers that we would have fresh milk and cottage cheese, and I'm probably going to butcher this. It's like kefir, something, a yogurt drink that they absolutely love. We would get that. We would get fresh berries and produce, and we would add and supplement in addition to what the food that they had there, because we didn't have permission to remove their food. So we would just add additional food to this. We had to raise about $500 a week, which was about 75 cents per kid, just to make sure that we could supplement enough protein and produce into their diet. On top of doing this, we also covered all necessities as far as shampoos, conditioners, deodorants, toothpaste, toothbrushes. Every time I've traveled, I don't think I've traveled with less than 6 suitcases, and they are jam-packed full. I've had amazing friends and family step up, and I'm like, okay, this is what they're in need of. A Ukrainian facilitator that's even been there gets lists of things that families can donate, Americans can donate to help supplement what is needed in these locations for the kids. And we have worked really hard on trying to just keep the necessities. The problem is we're feeling tapped out financially, not just our extended family and friends. How many more people can I ask over and over, hey, can you donate this? Can you donate this? So our funding has gone down a lot to help the needs of these kids, and it's not something that we can sustain. And that has been a concern of ours. Recently, the kids have been, we've had some chaperones leave, we've had some changes in different things, and the kids are lacking the supervision that is needed with them. They are taking public buses to different areas in Italy, and then they are needing a ride back because they are getting stuck about 45 minutes away. This is happening on a daily basis. They're traveling, I'm talking young teens, even taking their younger siblings with them and going far away and then calling a supervisor and needing a ride back. And then we are trying to raise money for the gas even for the chaperone to be able to pick up the kids. There has been several things of going on, and we've talked about, I think Justin mentioned it, how behaviors have changed with the kids when you add boredom because of lack of activities, and you add the trauma that they've experienced. We have kids who, in their culture, have picked up smoking, who have picked up habits that haven't been something that they have done in the past, and it's just been dwindling downhill. Since then, the Italians and Ukrainians have been trying to figure out what they want to do, and they officially have made it where we are in court right now, and we are waiting the answer and should have it any day if the kids are going to be returned to Ukraine. So, but all I can end with is saying that it's hard to understand if their displaced country or if in a war-torn country is a better situation for them, and that we have to pray for that when honestly we know that our homes would be the best.
Okay, and I'd like to invite Amber Matthews up to share the experience with her children.
Thank you very much. So we are the Matthews family. Our children, we have 3 girls that are in Italy. We had them over for hosting. My husband is active duty military, so we do move around the country quite a bit, and this was our first opportunity. We actually just moved back from Italy. We went through COVID in Italy, and so we're actually pretty familiar with Italy. And ironically, our kids got moved to Italy. So we do have 2 teenagers of our own at home. So we're in that teen life. We're in that teen stage. And all 3 of our girls are teens as well. So that'll make us a family of 5 kids. So in 2021, we formed a relationship with these 3 biological sisters through hosting, and we connected right away. We knew that we wanted to be the Matthews family forever. Her time with us was precious. We've had dreams. She wanted to see a zebra in a zoo. She had never seen a zebra, so we fulfilled that dream. If you ask her what her favorite part of being with us, she would say, being part of a family that loves me just like this. She wanted to participate more in being a part of a family than our guest. She wanted chores. She wanted to do family things. She wanted to be a part of the daily activities. And I think anybody that has hosted a child from any country will realize that that's the purpose of hosting, is to show and open up that door of what family life actually is. And once the children get a taste of what that is, what is family like? Their lives are changed forever. So, of course, being active duty military, we knew that the military life, my husband's in the SF world, and we knew what was about to happen, and we knew that it wasn't going to be short. So, sending her back on the airplane was very difficult. We tried every excuse in the world, but we did have to send her back and reunite her with her sisters. We had to have hard conversations when the war starts out. They wrote down our contact information, wrote down contact information of who they can trust, put it in their underwear. So if something happened, they can find somebody and hopefully get out of a bad situation. They have no one to trust but the adults that are put in charge of them. And they're trusting us to bring them to safety too. So our kids did keep their contact information with them all times, and luckily they were able to relocate to the Transcarpathian Mountains. There, an organization was able to pull them out of Ukraine. However, they did have to take a harrowing exit out of Ukraine, like most of the Ukrainian refugees have. They couldn't get a ride all the way to Romania, so they had to hike over the Transcarpathian Mountains just to catch the bus in Romania to take them to Italy. But once their ride to Italy was secured in Romania, and they did the Sound of Music scenario over the Transcarpathian Mountains, their lives changed for the worst. Despite all the proper documentation of the director, the kids were removed. The directors were removed as guardians from the kids. They were not allowed to see the children, or the directors would be arrested. The kids were taken illegally and disappeared. So they were dispersed all over Italy. Long story short, I traveled to Italy, helped track down the kids, get them visible in locations. The organization is now under investigation. We hired a lawyer there in Naples, and we got Hague involved. So they are out of the picture. Under that organization, they're out of danger with that particular organization. There's still some kids missing. We don't know where they are. These kids are constantly lacking even basic care. I had to form relationships with businesses around them. Luckily, I did live in Italy, and I was able to contact the salon down the street, the Farmacia, the Locoplesia. I had to contact them several times, just did 2 days ago because 2 of the girls, exhausted from heat, passed out. One of our girls actually broke her arm. She got attacked on the street, and a Good Samaritan on the street saw her, saw what had happened, took her to the hospital, and the hospital refused service to Ukrainian refugees. So I paid for the doctor at the pharmacy. That's how the pharmacies work. They have doctors at them. And so I contacted that pharmacy that I've been getting their sanitary napkins, their medicines, and everything to them. And they were able to treat her the best they could and sent her on her way, basically. But we're just like many other bad case scenarios. There's good scenarios and there's bad ones. And unfortunately, our 25 kids of orphanages, this orphanage was 25 kids, has been placed in a very bad scenario. And it just compounds and compounds. They're in a facility that hosts Syrian refugees. So they come in and out all of the time. And my daughter, the oldest one, who's about to turn 18, said, "Oh, well, the two girls were actually sold and they left today." And I said, "Sold?" I said, "Are you sure you're choosing the right word there? Is it sold?" I said, "Yes, they come and pay money for them and pick them up." So we've spent thousands of dollars on Amazon, on different resources, local people. However, if I go into the country and try to see any of the orphans, the threat of being arrested is there. They didn't realize how many American families, Canadian families, British families are connected to these orphans that they're trying to traffic. And I think that was the biggest downfall for them, is that they didn't realize what they were getting into. But never underestimate the mama bear, right? So I want to leave you with this. Our girls have asked many times. They've actually written a letter to Zelensky. They got a reply. And they said, "Yes, we're trying to work on getting you to a safe location." And that meant out of Italy. So they are about to leave to Italy to go back to Ukraine, where the bombs are dropping, because it's safer for them. But our youngest girl, I'm going to leave you with these words. She asks, "Why is it that you can bring any Ukrainian into your home except for us? We've already been to your house. Your government has already approved us to be in your home forever. So why are we the only ones that can't come to safety to your home?" Tell these girls all the time, write down all of these experiences. For the past 16 months, they have a journal full of stories. And once they are out of this location, they're going to have a big story to tell. And I hope everyone has a listening ear. But thank you for your listening ear and being a part of this logical solution for these children.
Families, we're going to go off script for just a moment. I'd like to take a 5-minute break. We've got some additional compelling stories coming up, and I want to make sure that everybody is recharged and ready to listen. So you're welcome to take a 5-minute break. The restrooms are out the door to the left. We have a lot of coffee, juice, and pastries remaining.
They're gonna reach. Yep, it will.
right. Ladies and gentlemen, can we get everyone back to their seats? Jill? Jill? Okay. Jill, you're up. You're up next. Okay, at this time, we'd like to introduce Jill Krenzer. We'll be talking to Karen in just a little bit, but we're going to skip to Jill to hear her accounts of what's happening with her two boys.
All right, I feel ill-equipped to be doing this today, but so I'm Jill Krenzer. Thank you everyone for being here. I speak on behalf of all the families. It means so much to feel like someone's listening and hearing what we have to say. So as you saw in the video clip earlier, I adopted a couple of years ago. I brought home a boy, and his best friend was still at the orphanage, and he kept telling me it was his brother, and they're not biologically brothers, but they're orphanage brothers, and he wanted us to bring him home too. So my husband was very much one and done. We're not doing this. And then we had Vanya in our home for shared hosting, and it was very quick that my husband started changing his tune. We then hosted Vanya for a session, and he went back, and we started fighting for his little brother to come for summer hosting. So his little brother, Jan, is 9. I'm 99% sure he has a type of primordial dwarfism that comes with a slew of different things. It's not just small stature. It's a lot of other issues as well, and one of those things is cognitive delays. He was put into, I don't know how long the boys have been in care. I know it's been at least 4 or 5 years, but I don't know how much longer. It could be much longer than that. The boys are now 9 and 11. And I'm sorry, they were separated. When they were put in care, they were separated, and Jan went into a severe special needs orphanage. I would imagine, and mostly because of what he looks like. He looks different, and so he was put somewhere where he was treated very different. It's severe special needs orphanage. In a lot of cases, kids are put in a crib, and basically bottles are given to them, and there's not much care other than that. And I don't know what his care was like, but I can guess what it was like, because in September, I started showing interest in Vanya. I asked about the brother. I was told, oh, we can separate them. I wasn't asking for them to be separated. I was just looking for information. We didn't know how severe the special needs were and if it was something we could take on. Anyways, we were very shortly thereafter told, oh, they moved Jan to Vanya's orphanage. So instead of separating the boys, they brought the boys together, which is great. I mean, that was wonderful, but we still had no idea what kind of special needs he had. So that was in September of 2021. So it's been almost 2 years. And I was told about a year ago that when Jan came to the orphanage, the new orphanage, he could barely walk and was stumbling all over the place. So at the time he was 7. He didn't talk. Now, whether that means he babbled and didn't speak words or he didn't speak at all, I'm not sure. And they really didn't expect much out of him. So we fought for Jan to come for winter hosting when Vanya came, and they told us no, we're not sending him. So we weren't sure why. We weren't really given a reason why. But after we hosted Vanya that winter, and my husband looked at me one day and he said, "How do we not give this kid parents too?" I started advocating to have Jan come for summer hosting last year, and we got an agreement that we were going to have to jump through hoops. A teacher was going to come and stay with us. If she felt like she could leave him, she would leave him, and if she felt like she couldn't, she'd take him back. If he stayed with us at the end of the summer, I would have to bring him back all the way to the orphanage in Ukraine. I'd have to travel back all the way with him. And we said, whatever, we'll jump through hoops. We want to know what this kid's needs are. We want to meet him. We want him in our home. And so we got the agreement. I was very excited, and within days, the war broke out. Hosting was canceled, and we all know the story of what led us here today. I was lucky enough to go. My boys are in Poland, and I was lucky enough to go and see them end of April last year and stay there for a few weeks. And I met Jan. At that time, Jan was riding a scooter, riding a balance bike. He's about the size of a 2-year-old. He comes just short of my waist, even though he's 9. And he was, all over the place, running, jumping. He sings and talks constantly. I don't know what he's saying, but he sings and talks constantly. I went back in November and was told that that's when the director started talking about how Jan, they didn't think that really anything would become of Jan, and they were shocked at the fact that he can walk and he can talk, and look at him now, who knows what he could be. I have no idea what his cognitive level is, but I know that he's not getting what he needs there. None of the kids are, but with kids with special needs, it's even more so. We have so much to offer here in the States, so many services that are covered, and there's just so much that could help him thrive. So I look at my boys, and of course, both of them need to be here. They both need loving stability, a loving family stability, to know that they have parents and a family. They need all of those things. All the kids do. But I guess, I was asked to kind of speak more on the special needs side of things. And I look at Jan, and he's a kid that potentially could live a fairly normal life if given the chance. There's a lot of potential there, untapped potential, and we don't even know what it is. And we don't even know how far it could go. And every day that he spends there, he's getting pushed further and further behind, as all the kids are, but especially when you're talking about a special needs child who really could use the services to get further ahead. Every day lost is another day that he's being pushed behind and being delayed even further. So where they are, the other thing that I just was going to touch on is with Jan, like I said, he's tiny. I don't know what his cognitive ability is, but where our kids are, they're near a lake. And several times while I was there, Jan would be running down to the lake and no one was watching him. I'd be walking up, just getting there during the day, and he's running down to the lake, beelining it, and there's no one around. And this little kid could very easily, does not know how to swim, could very easily just run in the lake. The kid's fearless. So just general supervision issues they're an issue everywhere. But that was one of the very concerning things to me at this location, is they're literally on a peninsula surrounded by a lake, and most of the kids don't know how to swim. There are life jackets available, a limited amount, but you're looking at a bunch of kids who want to go in the water and don't know how to swim and can jump in at any time. So anyways, there's a lot going on there. I don't feel comfortable because of some of the things with people on the ground that I can speak to the specifics, if that makes sense. We are always at a worry that we're going to be turned away and not be able to see our kids anymore. And so I feel like I'm in a position where I kind of have to watch what I say, but we're talking that there are a lot of, I think that to some extent the directors and the staff do the best that they can, but they're burnt out. You know, they're doing this 24/7, essentially being a teacher. You know, you've got a teacher with 20 students or whatever, but you're doing it 24 hours a day. You don't get a break from it. And they're burnt, and it's showing. It's showing in short fuses. It's showing in a million different ways. And so, yeah, I guess that's all I feel like I can say today. But yeah, so thank you again for being here and for listening and praying for change.
Leo and Wendy Van Asten. Play the video first.
Muoviti!
Same thing.
Muoviti! 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 Non vuol touch you.
No, don't touch him. Don't touch him. Да нельзя его душить, Дауны. Его нельзя душить, сука. У него что этот, сознание теряет. Видишь, у него ебало бледное стало.
Muoviti!
Good morning. I'm Wendy Van Asten, and this is my husband, Leo Van Asten. And this video that was just shared is our prospective adoptive son. And his sister is with him. We refer to them affectionately as M&M. And this video was shared with his permission because he said, you can only share this if someone can help. I don't want to be popular on TikTok just because people, basically want to gawk at an incident. So we've watched this video so many times, and I mean, how do you sit here just wanting to go there and remove your children from harm's way, right? And so we're here today because we need help, right? We need someone to step up and help us, whether or not that's the Department of State or Biden or Jill Biden, please. This abuse isn't unique. It just happened to be caught on camera. And there are much worse things happening, as we are told, to other children displaced in EU countries. So use this with compassion. Do not spread this for a scandal. Spread this for ways that someone could help our children come home where they would be much safer. I think the organization today, we didn't really know which order we were going, and we had something prepared, and now I'm completely going off script. I did want to tell you, we're Wisconsin residents, and so we're asking Senator Ron Johnson, who we met with yesterday, to help us to connect with the Department of State on the initiatives. We're meeting with our representative, Mark Pocan, tomorrow morning. We're calling on him. If there's a representative here, please. This is this is our child, right? Our children, so they're in Sicily, as you can maybe tell from the Italian being spoken in this video. And our children are 15 and 16, but almost 16 and 17, and they don't have time. They don't have any more time to wait to be in a family. They've waited almost their entire lives. And Leo and I are in, Jenny shared a slide early in today's presentations of kind of the breakdown of where American families are at in the process. Leo and I are in the 15%. We're ready, right? Like we have our dossier accepted, and the adoption was almost to the point where we can move forward when the war broke out. So, and our kids are asking, why are we not home yet? And we need to tell them something, right? We want to leave this event in DC with some action. We can say, this is what's going to happen, and this is what we can do for you temporarily. And this is also, by the way, what our government is going to try to do with Ukraine to help families like us who have children who don't have any more time to wait for the war to end. Because if martial law is still in place in 1 year from now, this young man will never be able to come home as a legal child of ours. I'm sure he will be in our lives forever, as will his sister, but there's two tracks, right? There's this temporary track, what is happening during the war, and there's the second track of how can we help these stalled adoptions? Please, like, let's find a path. Let's talk reasonably with Ukraine, and we need our government to do that. So if you're here from the government, thank you for coming, because the other parents in the room, we know each other's stories. We all like, we don't need to hear this again. We feel like we have beat our heads against a wall for the last year talking about our stories. So we need you. So if you're here, thank you. We were supposed to talk a little bit about conditions. This is an obvious problem. Do you want to just like hit some of the things that maybe others didn't?
As other people have talked about, there are situations on the ground, especially at least with our kids in Italy, where adults are taking advantage of the situation and profiting from this. This incident, we have been told by the caregiver, was because the institution that they had been staying in was managed by one person, and another person wanted the federal funding to go from that organization to another organization. And so there was a forced move where not only was our son abused, but the children were taken against their will. The children were separated from their belongings for they didn't know how long. They left with nothing. With the clothes on their back and the phones they were able to grab, they were left with that for at least 2 days before they got anything back, and it was over a week before they got all of their belongings back. So we can add to the obvious physical abuse, we can add psychological abuse, because all of the things that they brought along with them, that they evacuated from Ukraine with, are tied to us. They're tied to you. The things that your children brought out of Ukraine are tied to you. And being denied access to those things is psychological abuse. It's adding trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. And so not only are these kids not able to deal with the trauma that they've already had, it's more is being heaped on. And the sick thing is it's for financial gain by the people that are supposed to be caring for them. Like has been said before, food insecurity runs rampant. We are in very close communication with a caregiver that's with our kids, who said that the Italians, oh so graciously, brought them food for Saturday and Sunday. There's 5 more days in the week, but they got food for 2 days. That's great. The food that they get is also inadequate. That was mentioned before from Italy. It's lunch program, basically, at best, and insufficient. These are growing children. That's been very difficult for all of them. They have been forced to assimilate into Italian culture, being forced to go to school in a school that they don't know the language. They're not given proper translation. Our son, who was very frustrated by this, asked, would you please give me something? I would love to learn how to do programming. They gave him an Italian language textbook and no support. And that was that. We are seeing Thankfully, in our kids' situation, at least that we know about, not anywhere near as bad as other people have talked about, but some grooming behaviors where adults are offering the kids money and gifts as a way to get them on their side and be like, oh, we're friendly, come with us. And luckily, our kids have remained with their group. We're very proud, we're very happy about that, and count our blessings every day, especially when we hear the other stories. The place that they were moved to, we were told was going to be a better situation for them, and it has not been. They've been offered access to a psychologist once, and it was a psychologist who didn't speak Russian, who didn't speak Ukrainian, and they asked one of the other kids in the group to translate. Because that's what we all want to do, is have another listening ear as we're talking about our own trauma, and these kids are just, oh yeah, that should be fine. Well, none of the kids did it because they didn't feel comfortable with that. But the Italians were able to check that box. Like, well, we offered it. In their new situation as well, it's an institution that is set up to house 10 boys, 14 and under, or under 14. Currently, there were 6 boys already living there when our group of 10 showed up. So currently, one of those boys has since left, besides the point. There are now 16 people living in this facility, mixed genders between the ages of 8 and almost 17, plus 1 adult. There's not enough room for them. There wasn't enough room. They threw some bunk beds in to make room. The bathrooms don't have locks on the toilet stalls. The showers are separated by curtains only, but these are mixed genders. And the girls go to the bathroom and to the shower with a friend who stands guard to make sure that they're not so worried about their Ukrainian friends that are with them, but these other boys that are around who they don't know, who they can't speak with. 3 of them are Egyptian, 2 of them are Italian. They can kind of talk with the Italian boys, but that's that. Their caregiver has been an absolute saint through all of this because she's the only one who seems to be fighting hard to keep these kids together and sticking with them and not allowing, doing her absolute best to not allow the Italians to have their way with the kids. She has had minimal to no support from the Ukrainian side and absolutely 0 support from the Italian side. We are in contact with her on a regular basis, and once we started learning about the needs that the kids have had, we have been partnering with other families with our kids to support them financially, including things like clothes. They evacuated in February. I don't know, Sicily gets pretty warm in the summertime. They didn't have warm clothes. We helped them get warm clothes. They walk everywhere. They wore out their shoes. We got them shoes. They didn't have medicine. We got them medicine, and we continue to try to meet these needs for these kids. So to echo Wendy's comments, anybody in our own government who can help us, these kids don't deserve this. They deserve to be here where we can put our arms around them gently, not like that. None of these kids deserve this. And I can't tell you how much I've seen this video and it still kills me every time.
It's hard to follow that up, but unfortunately, the next topic is very relevant, and we'd like to invite Dr. Karen Sue Fellows to come up and talk about complex trauma. We've heard a lot about the physical conditions of these children and the deplorable living situation, but these children are plagued by many, many emotional and psychological problems as well. Here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Karen Fellows. I have a PhD in clinical Christian counseling. I've been counseling for years, but more importantly, as you can see by my beautiful attire, I am the potential adoptive mother of 5 Ukrainian orphans. So I've been asked to speak a little bit today about what kind of emotional battles these children, our children, are facing. I'm going to try to be very plain and all-encompassing in my language and how I present this so that it is not overwhelmingly technical, and so that it is very clear to understand. So let's start at the beginning. Children that are placed in orphanages don't come from the best living situations. Okay? That's pretty clear. They were put there for a reason. Regardless of how good an orphanage is, when a child's placed in an orphanage away from their biological parents, they end up experiencing the trauma of abandonment. Okay? There's science to prove that trauma changes a person's brain neurochemistry. And with that said, these children will now experience these new struggles, things like difficulty processing emotions, anxiety, hyperactivity, difficulty making decisions, mental and physical delays. The list goes on and on. And that's just from being placed in care. The next thing we need to consider is what life in an orphanage looks like as far as environment goes. We've touched on that. Parents have told about their experiences and what that looks like from their perspective. Orphanage life is a life of constant change. Children come, children go. Caregivers come, caregivers go. Adults come, adults go. These children learn that nothing's permanent. Okay? They believe that people leave them and never come back. This creates in the children an additional layer of trauma. They learn to not trust anyone to stay. They learn to not trust anyone to love them, to care about them, or to care for them. This is further compounded by abuses that generally happen in these settings. Even if you have a good orphanage, as we mentioned before, just the ratio of children to adults puts the children in a very vulnerable position. You could have the best intending adults, but then the children abuse each other. Okay? Or you could have these adults, as some of these parents have spoken about, just get so overwhelmed that they end up lashing out and taking out their frustrations, their anger, their just that sense of being just completely overwhelmed. They'll take that out on those children. So with that said, it's not unusual for orphans to be emotionally abused. And what does that look like? That looks like things like constantly shaming and berating these children. I know my children have been told that they're never going to be anything. They're not good enough. It's screaming and swearing at these kids. It's just that constant negative barrage. It's not unusual for orphans to be physically abused. This means things like being beaten, tied to beds, pulled by the hair. My little Max here, I was told that he would be beaten with a chair to punish him for his intense hyperactivity. That's the reality of an orphanage situation. All right. It is also not unusual for these children to be sexually abused, and that will be both from adults and children that will perform these kind of things. Okay, this is not unusual. So now we have children who have abandonment issues and the psychological impact of that, trust issues, permanence issues, physical and emotional trauma from abuse, and we're not even done. That's just the start of it. That's just the tip of the iceberg, okay? So orphans often suffer from neglect. Again, this is made worse by this unbalanced child to adult ratio. And generally speaking, orphanages don't have enough food or supplies to supply for all of these children. Even if they do have enough food and supplies, a lot of times food is used as a punishment against these children. They will have it taken away from them when they do something wrong. And something wrong is not going to be as drastic as we would think something wrong is. They might talk back and end up losing their meal. Okay, it is not what you think of when you think of what would deserve a punishment of no meal. All right. So then you have the other part of that where even if they are provided with their food, oftentimes the stronger kids will beat up the weaker kids and take their food. When Maxim stayed with us, he would hide food. All right. And so that is another one of those things that these children do and the things that happen to them from this trauma. We end up with children with severe cases of malnourishment and also the food related trauma, which causes them to hoard food and also to steal food. It's kind of one of these things where they did it to me and I need food, so I'm going to do it to you. All right. And that cycle continues happening just because they just need to eat. And again, we've touched on the lack of medicine, the lack of that sort of supply as well. And so if we're talking about these children that have these medical needs and they have these medicines that could help them with their needs, they're not being supplied with those medicines. They can barely get a Tylenol if they have headaches, or for the girls, if they have menstrual cramps, they're not going to be given medicine for that. So, continuing on, again, these layers are really adding up at this point, right? But it's at this point in their lives when most of these children started connecting with American families. All of these families that were hosting kids had been through training to teach us how to deal with these children and their emotional and mental needs. I don't know about all the hosting organizations, but our binder was about this thick with all the different things that we needed to cover and we needed to understand when it came to the trauma and the situations that these children had dealt with. So these parents had all been through these type of trainings. So with that said, these children came into our homes. They started getting connected. These parents loved and wanted these children, and these children knew it. And so they started getting exactly what every orphan wants. Every orphan wants a family. And so their dream was starting to come true. But let's add war. Let's add them getting bombed, shot at, evacuated to strange countries where they don't speak the languages. There's plenty of research to show that the catastrophic impact of these things, of war, of being evacuated, just on a normal child. Not a child that's been through all of these emotional trauma layers already, but just a normal everyday child is severely damaged by war. All right. So now consider how much more impact that would have on our children. Each of these layers of trauma bring with them more urgency for someone to intervene on the child's behalf. Now imagine you have the perfect people for these children to walk them through all the steps of healing, to become a permanent fixture in their lives, to help these children begin to thrive. You know they're the perfect people for the job because they've proven that they're in it for the long haul. They've not turned their backs on these kids. They've not given up. They've not backed down. They have access to doctors. They have access to therapists. They have access to counselors. They have access to medicines that are not being provided for any of these children. Now imagine that these perfectly fit parents are not allowed to take their children, but instead the children are placed in another country so that country can kind of babysit these children until the war is over. A babysitter is never as good as a parent. And guess what? There's another layer to their trauma. As these children sit waiting for their American parents to come and get them, they're losing hope. We've talked about that. They're all losing hope. They're backsliding on all their progress. We've seen that. They're having problems. We saw it in the video. They're having problems with authority. They're starting to have issues. And they're feeling that trauma of abandonment for a second time. How many layers are we going to allow to be added to these children before our government says enough is enough and takes some responsibility and initiative in this process? These children have more trauma added to them on a daily basis. I didn't even get into the deep parts of their everyday. This was just an overview, guys. So, as they're going through this, they desperately need a resolution to get them out and get them out of this cycle, this horrendous cycle of trauma. My Ukrainian children have been separated not only from their American families, but also from their biological siblings in their current locations. They've been fed spoiled food, given cigarettes and vapes, treated like a cheap child labor force while in Italy. My Yulia, that's this one, she's on the list to be sent back to Ukraine. She's going to be 16 in October. That makes her age out of the system, right? I have heard rumor that she will most likely be sent to a trade school, which would most likely mean that she's going to be sent into these areas that are bombed on a regular basis. These kids aren't taught to do anything but follow rules. They don't know how to survive that. They don't know how to survive on their own. They don't know how to get supplies. They don't know how to budget. They literally have no idea how to be an adult, never mind an adult in a war-torn area. Their situation is desperate. I'm telling you both as a counselor and as a mom. These children need to be with their families. They need the structure, they need the comfort, they need the guidance, they need the one-on-one attention, and they need the care that only a loving family can offer so that they can finally begin to heal. Thank you.
We're going to go directly into hearing from some children, some who have recently got out of Europe and Ukraine, and some who are still there communicating with their parents. At this point, I'd like to invite Mari Thompson. Mari and her mother Colleen have driven here from Kentucky to support our cause and to allow Mari to tell her story.
Hello, my name is Mari Thompson. Sorry, I'm so nervous. I was adopted last year during the war, and I want to tell clear my stories. When I was 4 years old, I was sent to live the Donetsk orphanage. I lived there from 2008 until 2014, when Russia invaded my city. Sorry. We lost everything, but we lost everything, but were safely moved to Emerald City in Svetohorsk. My life in Emerald City is so good to most orphanage in Ukrainian. I really wanted to family, but I was thankful for life there. I met my family in 2019 when I was 15 years old. I feel so good. I will be adopted. I was happy to live in America with my parents and 8 brothers and sisters. But of COVID and some problem with my documents, my parents had to wait to come for my adoption. I was very sad and we missed each other. Into in 2021, before holidays, all documents were good and we can finish my adoption. My parents tell me they come in February for the adoption, but on February 24, Russia sent many missiles in our area. Our orphanage director sent our teachers to get us our right now. We didn't have time to pack our suitcase. We had only a small bag with little clothes. Um, Everything else I left behind. 60 of us, we were 1-2 buses. Police come to escort us. Bombs were around us. It was very scary. We drive, then took and train to leave. It took us many hours to travel there. We were tired and confused and scared. We went to an orphanage in a village. Even though we were across the country, we had many bombing around live. Every time we sirens come, we all went to the bomb shelter. Sorry. It was a cold basement under the orphanage. The we we spent hours down there, something 4 or 5 times a day. We didn't have basic things, underwear, clothes, and something different. Americans brought donation, and we were thankful. After 3 months, I was able to finally come to the US. My friends from Emerald City were sent to Italy because it was supposed to be safer than stay in Lviv. Many of my friends also were American families who they love and wanted to be adoption. Only because I turned 19 could my parents finish my adoption. I was happy for me but sad for them. They wanted to come to the US and stay with their families until the war was over. We hoped them would be safe and life would be better in Italy, but it is not. My friends tell me the housing is not good. They are hungry and scared. The Italy guardians separated them from their Ukrainian caretakers. My friends do not speak Italy, and the Italians do not speak Ukrainian. I'm speaking today to help my friends for my orphanage and the other orphanages. They needed help. They need to come be safe, which their American parents will until the war is over.
Mari, thank you. That took a tremendous amount of courage. And her English is fantastic. We're going to call up 4 American parents to briefly read some words that their children have texted them. These are children on the ground in temporary shelters reaching out to their American parents. So let us hear the children's words through their parents. Gina.
Good afternoon, Mom, Dad, Maddie, Owen, and Barrett. I miss you so much. Mom and Dad, when will you take me home to America? I don't want to be here. I miss you all very much. I want to go to your home. I want to go to school in America. I want you, Mom and Dad, to be with me every day. I don't want to go back to Ukraine. There's a war there. Please take me away. I want to go with you. I'm very much asking Mr. President of Ukraine to allow you to take me home to America. Please.
Stan, would Dennis like to come up with you? Okay. Stan is going to read a statement for Dennis. Dennis is here in person.
My name is Stan. I'm here with my wife Patty, and Dennis is with us, our son. We were over in Ukraine February 9th and 10th, and we were going to bring 2 children home with us in March. But 10 days after we were there, the war broke out. This is from Dennis. Hello, my name is Dennis, and I am 19 years old. I was born in Ukraine and lived in an orphanage since I was 8 years old. I'm happy to be at home in America with my family. I love my mom and dad. They adopted me last August, but it took over 2 months to get home. I had a hard time trying to come to America through Romania because of the war. I finally was able to cross into Poland. For 5 years, we were a family through hosting. My sister Tashi was part of our family, but she has been left behind. Although we were in different orphanages, we came together to be hosted in America, Christmases and summers for many years. We would have been adopted in 2021, but because of the war, my school hid out in many places in Ukraine, including the forests of the Transcarpathian Mountains, until I was rescued. I heard sirens and saw bombs drop nearby, but I knew I was safe because my family in America were praying for me. Tashi's orphanage escaped to Romania, so we have lost contact with each other. She will be 15 next week, and we haven't seen each other for 2 years. She would be with us if it had not been for the war. I really miss her and wish she were here with us like she is supposed to be, because we both love our mom and dad, and they love us too. My sister Tashi is a missing part of our family, and I know mom and dad are still praying for her. Tashi misses us too. She is homesick and cries because she doesn't understand. She needs to be in our forever family like I have found, if we can get her home. Can anything be done about bringing her home? Please, can anyone help us? Thank you.
Has Katie Linnell arrived? Okay. The Linnell family yesterday, they're from Arizona, and they met their congressman. They were invited to coffee with the congressman this morning. So while we won't hear her story, let's hope that other great things are happening this morning. So Kelly Smith-Waja.
Good morning, everyone. My husband and I are attempting to adopt 2 brothers. We did meet one during our hosting. The other one, unfortunately, was too old to come at the time, and he is currently 18 and a half. So time is really of the essence to try to get him home with us. So I have both my words and some of my son's words, and I'm going to read it, and I'm just going to ask you to bear with me because it's been a very emotional morning here, and to go last has been really tough. Okay, we met our boy in 2021 when we hosted him in our home. He is sweet, smart, funny, and loving, and he fit into our family seamlessly as if he had always been here. We fell in love with him and he with us, and we knew we would make him a part of our family. Each night as I tucked him into bed, he asked if he was mine like my other children are, and he begged us not to send him back to Ukraine and to stay with us. When he did have to return to Ukraine, the invasion began right away, and he was evacuated to Poland with some of the children in his orphanage and a caretaker. That caretaker has since returned to Ukraine. His oldest brother, who we're also trying to still adopt, he was evacuated to a totally different country. He's in Moldova. We don't think he even knows that we're trying to adopt him at this time. So in the boy we met, his very short life, he's lost his parents who have passed, his home, his sibling, his orphanage, his few personal belongings, including an album we made him from when he was here. They didn't let him bring anything with him when he was evacuated. His country, his caretaker, and now us, his family that he loves. How truly petrifying for a child. I, as a grown, capable adult, I was afraid to travel here by myself, so I brought a friend with me, thank God. But can you imagine what trauma these children are having to face, basically alone, and what lasting negative effects it will bring to them? I have already 3 internationally adopted children, so believe me when I say I know what trauma looks like and what it does to a child who feels unloved, uncared for, forgotten, and has no one to love or hug or console them. He is currently at a facility in Poland that has been turned into a holding center for orphans displaced by the war. He shares one of the hotel rooms with about 6 older boys. He says there are several hundred children there. I've personally been told there are 700 there. There is one bike to ride. They do not go outside often, and he has no regular schooling. We know there is not much supervision there. Twice, when we did not hear from him for several weeks, when we finally did reach him, the first time he had a large wound on his face, and the other time his head was completely wrapped in bandages with large sections of skin on his face missing and raw. The only explanation we received from an adult there was, somersault, all done now, fine. We were left to speculate if he had been beaten up, pushed, had a concussion, whether he received appropriate medical care, and just what exactly was going on there. When we are able to speak with him, he begs us to come and get him and bring him home to America. On good days, he asks us about his siblings here, his dog, his scooter, and if the cat is still sleeping in his bed waiting for him. He is. He asks if he is still mine. I assure him yes, forever. He has never asked for anything material, only to be ours, to belong and to be loved. He is worried about how long it will be until he is with his brother, his bio brother again. Sometimes, with the gap in our languages, our conversations are just him repeating, mama, 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 with me only able to answer each time, da, ja tut, yes, I'm here. On bad days, sometimes he cries or becomes so overwhelmed that he cannot speak. And who could blame him as he has been enduring this unbearable situation for not a week and a half, not a month and a half, but a year and a half. So in closing, if there's anybody in power here who can help us, I'm asking as a human being for you to help us implement a program to quickly bring all the waiting children home. But as a mama to a very sad and confused little boy and his brother who does not even know he has the chance for a family yet and may be giving up hope, I am begging even just one of you to please have the heart to take a big enough interest to make this happen. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ukraine Care 300.
We're going to listen to just one more account. And this is a girl who has recently turned 18, was able to be brought to the United States from United for Ukraine. We're going to listen to two different segments. So we're going to give me just a moment to bring this video up. I need to go to 11 minutes and 25 seconds. Now she is going to be speaking Ukrainian with subtitles, so please read the subtitles.
Я почала дуже багато.
She's talking about the mayor of the town in Italy.
І інколи мене заставляли це робити. І мені було це важко робити, але я це робила. І так само я один раз курила, і це було дуже важко. І я грала в гру «Синій кит». І це було дуже-дуже важко, і тому що ти розуміла, що твоє життя нічого не варте. Одним словом, в мене в Італії була людина, котра за мною дивилася, і спершу я була не цікава йому, і він не дивився на мене. А потім, коли ми почали розмовляти, і я не зрозуміла, як це все почалося, але почалося так, що він почав мене спершу водити в ресторан. Я думала, це просто дружба, нічого більшого, він був мені як друг, і я так само ставилась до свого дідушки, теж так само ставилась, це було непогано. Але потім він почав все більше і більше мене водити в ресторани і купляти мені одяг, який дуже, ну, не дуже дорого стоїть, але дорого стоїть. І одним словом, це було дуже важко зрозуміти, тому що це були як відносини жінки і чоловіка, або це відносини як друга і друга. І одним словом, він мені все купляв, і ми постійно грали. І я думала, що це дружба. Ми постійно... Я постійно думала, що це просто дружба і більше нічого більшого. І я не розуміла, що це таке. І це було важко, тому що він завжди казав, що мене батьки не люблять. І те, що я ніколи не попаду в Америку. Цей чоловік завжди казав, що ти ніколи не попадеш додому, і що ти залишишся в Італії, навіщо ти їдеш в Америку, і ти впевнена, що твої сестри і брати приїдуть до Америки? Я така, я не знаю, я просто довіряю Богу, і я не знаю, що буде далі. І він почав ще більше дивитися за мною, і ми їздили в кафе ранком, і він завжди в мене питав, чи ти хочеш зі мною піти на роботу, чи ще щось. І це було важко, тому що я справді не розуміла. Це були емоції, і він просто грався моїми емоціями. І це було важко, тому що він був дуже, це був як моя дідушка. І це було важко, тому що я не розуміла, що відбувається. Я була просто в шоці. І тоді, коли я повинна була їхати додому, ці люди, котрі за мною дивилися, вони були дуже сильно злі. Я завжди запитувала маму, чи повернуся я додому, чи буду я вдома, чи я не могла довіряти людям, я не могла. Інколи ми були настільки близькі, що ми були настільки близькі, що це було важко пережити. І він постійно, ми сиділи з цим чоловіком, і він мені предложив вино. І я така, окей, я зроблю це. І я випила це вино, і мені настільки добре стало, а потім я проснулася і зрозуміла, що це тільки це не допомагає, це тільки гірше. Одним словом, вийшло так, що я випила дуже багато вина, і я не розуміла, що відбувається, і це було як сексуальне насильство. Ну, я про це не хочу розмовляти, це дуже болюча тема, я просто не розуміла, що я тоді робила і що відбувалося зі мною. І я дуже багато пила вина, і це було важко.
Were you afraid of him? Were you afraid of him? Were you afraid of him?
Я його боялася інколи, коли він був дуже злий на мене, коли я поверталася до Америки. Можна я change my...
Mm-hmm. You can change the way you're sitting.
Так, подбали.
Mm-hmm.
Він був злий на мене тоді, коли поверталася.
The context here, the question that her American mother asks her is if she knows about punishments that happen with other children. This blew my mind.
До Америки. Можна я change my...
Mm-hmm. You can change the way you're sitting.
Так, подбали.
How did they punish children?
Інколи я дуже боюся електрошокерів. І це мене зводить з розуму. Тому що в Італії... В Італії до мене не до мене дуже погано ставилось, до дітей використовували електрошокери. Це було важко, тому що я розуміла, що електрошокери – це дуже погано. І коли я приїхала додому, то я дуже сильно боялася електрошокерів, тому що інколи дітей могли вдарити електрошокерами.
Did they hurt kids in any other ways? Did they do anything else to hurt children in Italy? Did they hurt children in any other way? Mm-mm.
The interview stops here. She
Did they?
became too upset. And the final caption is that she went and vomited after having this conversation. Okay. We've heard a lot of difficult information today. And at this time, we'd like to bring up Senator Raymond Lesniak. He's a former state senator in New Jersey, 40-year tenure, founder of the Lesniak Institute for Leadership. But fate connected us, brought us together, and he is now helping bring our voices to the people that we think can help solve the problems. We'd like to invite Senator Lesniak up to kind of wrap up our morning and as a call to action.
So, thank you for that loud, resounding applause. So, I'm here to bring good news. So first, let me, I'm not here by fate. I'm here because Carolina Denhart brought me, our international adoption lawyer from Poland. Carolina saw that I was not only a state senator for 40 years, but my grandparents were born in Godowa, Poland, right on the border of Ukraine. And we went with a group of folks, we went to Poland, visited 3 orphanages, and we brought them iPads and clothing and toys, and they were very happy with our presence. But they were more happy with our presence. They grabbed us, they hugged us, we high-fived them. But we were only there for a couple hours. And then, they went their lonely ways. So I am determined to get this done. And Carolina will tell you I get things done, right, Carolina? So first of all, by the way, when I was in the back, I saw the priest from the church here. And I said, Nebenja Pofaloni Jezus Christus, which is the Polish way of greeting a priest. And he said, I'm not Polish, I'm not Polish. I also have a book for Pon Tomchuk, who sung that beautiful anthem, American anthem, Pon Tomchuk. You're a great American, Stovat. Well, as I said, I am here to bring good news. We had a major breakthrough yesterday with our meeting at. Oh, but by the way, I forgot. I always forget them. My staff, our great videographer, Kevin Gonzalez. Give him a big hand. Kevin is going to be creating and he's great talent, very creative, a mini documentary and mini clips that we will get exposure as much as possible to whomever is possible to hear your stories, because your stories will have the most impact on politicians like me. Okay, my chief of staff is here. Where is Felipe? Felipe Peralta. Give Felipe a big hand. He's my chief of staff. And our two interns who are students at Kane University, Gabriella and Michael. And they will learn more here today than they will ever learn in a classroom. Thank you for coming. All right, so we had a major breakthrough yesterday at the State Department, and it was very interesting because Mr. Vick, who was whatever, he was the guy in charge there, whatever he was in charge of, he had no clue, totally unprepared, and we grilled him. I grilled him, as you know. But I was so impressed with him because he stayed with it. He stayed with us until he found out, and we did grill him, but he found out what needs to get done. And he acknowledged that he was unprepared, and he stayed until he found out what needs to get done that he couldn't do, but how he could get the people who can get it done the information they need. And that's what we're going to do. Jenny, you're going to get me the definition of these 200 families, because we have to limit it. We can't ask of Ukraine too much on this issue. We have to limit it to these 200 families and these 300 children. That's our goal. And we will be introducing at the press conference later on a sense of Congress resolution. Now, I know that you've done a great job getting these petitions for parole, but the resolution will send a message to Biden and Blinken. And that's what we have to get to, because it can be voted on in Congress. So, as a matter of fact, I was talking to some folks who said that Senator Ted Cruz said, whatever you need to get done, I'll do it for you. So, well, before you applaud him, let's see him do it. Hey, I'm from New Jersey. You got a problem with that? So, what he needs to do is to talk to the chair of the House Foreign Relations Committee. The chair is from the 10th Congressional District in Texas. So whoever's here from Texas, get on the phone. There you go. We talked, because he can not only sponsor this sense of Congress resolution, but he can put it on the agenda for a vote. And we will ask every one of you, we will circulate it. The great Jenny of the world, she does everything. It's incredible. I'm gonna hire you after this, you know. We have to get this to every member of Congress because what it does is it asks Biden, our president, to take action. And that's what, and I believe, I have a little bit of experience. I ran two of Bill Clinton's campaigns for New Jersey. I was Democratic state chair. I know how people in politics, what moves them. That will move Biden. If he sees something in Congress that's actually going to come up for a vote, asking him to do something. That's the breakthrough that I believe we have. I'll be meeting with Congressman from New Jersey, Chris Smith, who is very pro-family. He's pro-life. I am not. I'm a Democrat. He's a Republican. But he's also in the Ukrainian caucus in Congress. I'll be meeting with him this week and asking him to promote this sense of Congress resolution. So I'm here to say we have good news. I know how hard that you have worked. I see and feel the emotions that you have. We're going to get this done, and it's going to be done sooner rather than later. Thank you very much.
Okay. Looking for, or Elena, who is it that actually had the news last night or this morning? Can I share where we're going tomorrow? I can share it? 10 o'clock tomorrow? We have an audience with the ambassador from Ukraine.